Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is very targeted. We are cutting straight into the biology of why sleep is non-negotiable.
Exactly.
We're going to give you the exact scientific evidence and, the structured framework you really need to master your upcoming essay exam on this topic.
We're building a case, really, a logical, systematic case.
Proving that sleep is an active, essential requirement for survival, not some kind of luxury or a customizable lifestyle choice.
And that's the key distinction we have to make right away. So many of us see sleep as this annoying interference.
Something you can just shave off the edges of to get more done.
Yes, to maximize productivity. But that whole perception is
Yeah.
fundamentally and scientifically inaccurate.
So for an essay, where do you start?
You have to establish right at the top that we spend about 1/3 of our entire lives asleep. 1/3. That makes it a required activity, a true biological imperative.
And the data that backs that up, it's pretty dramatic, isn't it? When you actually push the boundaries of sleep deprivation, the results look almost identical to another major survival need.
They do. The evidence is, well, it's terrifyingly direct.
So what did the studies show?
The empirical studies, especially the ones on lab animals like rats, show that if you deprive them of sleep entirely, they die
And how long does that take?
within 2 to 3 weeks.
Oh.
And if you look at the timeline for, say, death by starvation, it falls into that very same 2 to 3 week window.
Wow.
So that fact alone elevates sleep far beyond just rest. It proves that, life literally ceases without it.
Okay, so we know it's required for life. But before we get into the why, the actual mechanisms, we need a really crisp scientific definition. What exactly is sleep?
Sleep is a behavioral state, but it's critical to understand that it's a natural, dynamic, and intensely active process.
Right, and that's the first common mistake students make, right? Thinking of it as just shutting down for the night.
Exactly. The brain isn't just resting, it's shifting into a different and actually highly productive mode. It involves these really organized physiological changes.
And since it's an active state, we need to map out what's happening in the sleeping brain. It's cyclical, I understand, not just one long, uniform block of rest.
Absolutely not. The night is a structured performance. It cycles between two basic stages, usually in about 90-minute to 110-minute cycles.
And the first stage takes up most of the early part of the night.
Yes, that's NNREM, or non-rapid eye movement sleep. This is where most of our physical restoration happens.
Okay, so what defines NREM sleep physiologically? What's happening in the body?
NREM is divided into a progression of stages. Historically, there were 4, now it's often simplified to 3. But the key thing is, as you go deeper into these stages, the electrical activity in the brain, it changes.
Your brain waves.
The brain waves, exactly. We measure them, and they get slower, and their amplitude, their height, you could say, gets much greater.
So bigger, slower waves means deeper sleep.
Precisely. The deepest stages are often called slow wave sleep, or SWS. During NREM, your muscle activity is low, but, and this is important, your muscles still have their ability to function.
So you might twitch or roll over.
Right? You're not paralyzed. This is the body's physical system rebooting, recovering energy.
Okay, that covers the deep physical rest. But then we shift into that second stage, the one we all associate with vivid dreams and some strange paradoxes.
That would be REM sleep or rapid eye movement sleep. And it's called that for a very literal reason. It's characterized by these bursts of rapid eye movements under your closed eyelids.
And the paradox is what's happening in the brain.
The paradox is key, yes. The brain's electrical activity, if you can measure it with an EEG, looks remarkably similar to when you're awake.
So it's very active.
Very active, low voltage, faster frequencies. The brain is almost agitated.
So the brain is active, but the body is not.
Critically, yes. The one huge physiological difference that defines REM is that the body experiences an almost complete temporary paralysis
Paralysis of what, specifically?
of the major skeletal muscles, your arms, your legs. This is a brilliant safety mechanism. It protects us from acting out the often wild and dramatic dreams that happen during this phase.
That paralysis is a perfect example of how organized sleep is. It's not just a shutdown. The body has this complex, built-in safety switch that flips on exactly when the brain is most active.
It is. Now, regulating this whole structured cyclical system is a kind of pressure cooker built into our biology. The third key concept for your exam is homeostatic pressure.
Right, the internal timer, the drive to sleep.
Correct. The longer you stay awake, the stronger the desire and the physiological need to sleep becomes. It's a relentless building pressure.
And that defines the homeostatic component of sleep.
It does. And that pressure becomes so hard to resist that after about 16 hours of being continuously awake, Your cognitive function just starts to plummet.
Regardless of your willpower.
Willpower has nothing to do with it at that point.
It's fascinating how that pressure works alongside our internal clock, because the homeostatic pressure is the timer ticking down how long we've been awake, but that doesn't decide when we sleep, does it?
No, it interacts with the clock, the circadian rhythm.
Let's define that for everyone.
The circadian rhythm is our internal biological clock. It cycles over roughly a 24-hour period, and it's governed by a little part of the brain called the SCN in the hypothalamus.
Okay, so the pressure tells you how badly you need sleep.
And the circadian rhythm tells you the optimal time for that sleep. For quality, restorative sleep, you need both to be aligned.
Okay, so let's unpack this mission. We've defined the state-active, cyclical, and we know it's a survival imperative regulated by this chemical timer. Now, the core of the essay question: why is sleep so fundamental? You said the answer really rests on two indispensable pillars.
Right. These are the two jobs that only sleep can accomplish. If you think of it this way, idea 1 is about physically cleaning the hardware, the brain itself.
And idea 2.
Idea 2 is about making sure the software, all the regulatory systems of the body is running smoothly after that reboot.
So what are they called?
The first is metabolic clearance, which is the housekeeping function. The unique, active process of physically cleaning toxins and waste from the brain.
And the second is systemic regulation.
Or functional optimization. This is sleep's role in maintaining the body's overall homeostasis, that stable, balanced internal condition, and optimizing complex functions like memory, metabolism, and your immune system.
Let's start with that essential housekeeping function, because it really tells a wonderful story about biological engineering.
It's incredible.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We start with a fundamental problem of waste management in the most active organ in the body, the brain.
And it is a problem of sheer volume and activity. You have to think about the brain's workload.
It's intense.
It's incredibly intense. Even though the brain is only about 2% of your body's mass, its activity uses up a staggering quarter of the body's entire energy supply.
A quarter, that's an astronomical burn rate. And like any busy engine, that constant activity means it's constantly producing waste.
Exactly. This high metabolic activity creates cellular debris, waste products. And the one we focus on most, especially for neurodegenerative health, is a protein called amyloid beta.
And this is a protein that's produced all the time, in all of us.
All the time. It's a normal byproduct of your neurons firing and communicating. So producing amyloid beta isn't the problem itself.
It's what happens when we fail to clear it out.
That's where the pathology starts. In diseases like Alzheimer's, this protein starts to build up, to clump together, and form these plaques in the spaces between the brain cells.
Clogging up the vital communication channels.
Right, and that disrupts neurological function.
Now, the rest of our body has a very effective standard system for dealing with this kind of protein waste, doesn't it?
It does. The body's primary sanitation system is called the lymphatic system.
Can you define that for us?
The lymphatic system is the body's secondary network of vessels. Its job is to collect waste proteins, excess fluid, cellular debris from all your tissues, filter it, and dump it back into the blood to be eliminated. It's essential.
But here's the major biological problem. The brain doesn't have these lymphatic vessels. Why not? Why couldn't evolution just install the standard plumbing?
Well, the brain is completely different because of its unique physical architecture. It's enclosed in a rigid, fixed skull.
It's tightly packed.
It's incredibly tightly packed with billions of cells. And as Jeff Iliff pointed out in his work, there is simply no room inside that fixed space for a whole second set of vessels to be woven through that dense tissue.
So that structural limitation creates a massive clearance problem. How do you clean the busiest organ if it doesn't have the standard waste disposal plumbing?
And this leads to the truly ingenious biological solution. This is where sleep becomes indispensable.
So what did the brain do?
It solved this engineering problem by repurposing the infrastructure it already had. It created a specialized network called the glymphatic system.
The glymphatic system.
It's the specialized plumbing system in the brain that uses the existing paths around the blood vessels to basically pump a cleaning fluid through the tissue to clear out the waste. It completely bypasses the need for a separate lymphatic system.
And what's the cleaning fluid it uses?
It uses cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF. This is a large pool of clean, clear fluid that fills the space all around the brain. It's a cushion, but it's also a reservoir of cleaning solution.
And the crucial point for an essay argument is that this system only really kicks into high gear when we're asleep.
That's the key. It doesn't seem to work effectively or at all when we're awake.
Okay, let's walk through that sequence step by step. This
Okay.
is the core mechanistic argument for idea 1.
Right. We can break it down into cause, mechanism, and outcome. The cause is that transition from the busy waking state into the active, deep sleep state.
The busy electrical signaling has to stop for the system to engage.
It has to quiet down. And then comes the immediate physical mechanism.
This is the most counterintuitive part.
It really is. During sleep, studies suggest that the brain cells themselves, the neurons and the glial cells, they actually appear to temporarily shrink.
They shrink.
They shrink in volume. Think of it like all the cars on a busy highway suddenly pulling over and parking in garages. This shrinkage opens up the spaces between the cells that were packed so tightly together.
So if the cells shrink, they create these temporary channels, allowing the cleaning fluid to get in where it couldn't before.
Exactly. That newly opened space allows for the flushing phase. The CSF, that cleaning fluid, is actively pumped into the brain tissue, flowing rapidly along the outsides of the blood vessels.
And as it flows through, it's like a rapid river, just clearing away all that accumulated junk.
All the amyloid beta and other neurotoxic waste. And then you get the outcome.
And why does this prove indispensability?
Because the outcome is incredibly efficient waste removal. The clearance of that toxic amyloid beta is much more rapid. Some studies say 10 times faster in the sleeping brain than in the awake brain.
So sleep shifts the brain into this critical cleaning mode.
It does. It has to catch up on all the waste that built up during those 16 hours of being awake. And that whole process depends on the cell shrinkage, which appears to be unique to the sleeping state.
Which means this critical function cannot be replaced or accomplished while you're awake.
It can't.
This is powerfully reinforced by clinical evidence that links sleep quality to future disease. We have to talk about that longitudinal study by Weiner and his colleagues in 2020.
This study is so important. It's crucial because it went beyond just correlation. It actually tested whether poor sleep could forecast how fast these toxins would accumulate in the future.
So how did they do it?
They used objective in-lab sleep recording. It's called polysomnography.
Which involves a full-head EEG mapping the electrical activity.
Right. And they tracked amyloid beta accumulation in healthy older adults over several years.
So they weren't just observing that people with Alzheimer's sleep poorly. They were asking if poor sleep actually causes the accumulation to speed up.
Precisely. And they found that worse initial sleep quality did predict a significantly greater rate of amyloid beta deposition in the future. It's objective prospective evidence.
And they pinpointed 2 specific objective markers of poor sleep that were the most predictive. What were they?
The first and the most mechanistic had to do with the quality of deep rest, specifically NREM slow wave activity, or SWA.
Those big, slow electrical waves we talked about.
Exactly. But Weiner and Walker focused on the proportion of the very lowest frequency SWA, brainwaves that are below 1 hertz.
And why is that specific low-frequency range so important?
Because that specific, slow, deep electrical activity is thought to be the engine that actually drives the glymphatic pumping action.
I see.
So they found that diminished low-frequency 1 hertz SWA was associated with a greater subsequent rate of amyloid beta accumulation.
So if the engine for the cleaning system doesn't run deep enough, the waste just builds up faster.
That's the idea. It's a very specific, powerful piece of evidence.
And the second marker was a bit more general, but just as important.
The second was sleep efficiency. This is just a simple measure. It's defined as the total amount of time you spend actually sleeping, divided by the total time you spend in bed.
As a percentage.
As a percentage. And they found that worse sleep efficiency, meaning more time spent tossing and turning, being awake during the night, also reliably predicted a higher rate of amyloid beta increase.
So fragmenting your sleep prevents that sustained deep cleaning from happening.
It does. The link is undeniable.
Yeah.
Failing to get deep, efficient sleep is literally a failure of the brain's unique waste disposal system.
Which may accelerate the very pathology that we're all trying to avoid.
That is the core takeaway of Idea 1. This function is fundamentally non-compensable.
Okay, let's package this complex idea into a concise, exam-ready paragraph.
Sure. The core content you'd want to include is this. Sleep is fundamental because it activates the brain's unique metabolic waste clearance system.
Start with the problem. The brain lacks a traditional lymphatic system.
Right, due to its rigid structure. So it relies on the glymphatic system during sleep. This process is triggered by neural cell shrinkage, which creates these temporary channels,
allowing cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF, to rush through the tissue.
This flushing action removes neurotoxic proteins, like amyloid beta, whose accumulation is directly linked to Alzheimer's pathology.
And then bring in the evidence.
Objective research from Weiner and his colleagues in 2020 provides strong evidence for this link. confirming that reduced slow-wave activity, specifically that low-frequency SWA and low sleep efficiency, prospectively forecast an accelerated rate of amyloid beta accumulation.
Underscoring this function as essential for long-term neurological health.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a powerful first pillar. So let's move on to the second.
Now we shift our focus. We go from cleaning the brain's hardware to optimizing the entire operating system of the body and mind.
This is idea 2, systemic regulation.
It is. If idea 1 was about managing the toxic byproducts of being awake, idea 2 is about maintaining homeostasis and making sure the entire body runs efficiently.
And this is where we discuss why sleep makes us better at everything we do while we're awake, starting with the immediate cognitive benefits.
Cognitive restoration is probably the most immediate necessity we feel. Sleep is absolutely critical for waking cognitive functions, like vigilant attention, alertness, sustained focus.
And we see this proven by that homeostatic pressure we talked about. Performance starts to decline really quickly after about 16 hours of being awake.
It does. The brain simply cannot maintain optimal function without that periodic structured rest.
Then this restoration isn't just passive, it's an active process of reorganizing everything we took in during the day.
Precisely. Sleep is vital for something called memory consolidation.
Let's define that.
Memory consolidation is the complex process where the brain actively selects, strengthens, and integrates important neural patterns and memories that were formed during the day.
So it's not just saving memories, it's also cleaning them up.
It is. It's also helping the brain discard unneeded or redundant information. It's a critical sorting and filing process.
Does the type of sleep matter for consolidation?
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
The entire night works as a team. The deep NREM sleep in the early part of the night is crucial for strengthening new memories, like hitting save on a file.
Okay, and then REM sleep comes in later.
Yes, and REM sleep in the second half of the night seems to be essential for integrating those new memories into your existing knowledge networks. It improves things like spatial reasoning and problem solving.
It's a highly optimized two-stage process.
It is.
Okay, so moving past the mental reboot, let's look at how sleep regulates our internal body systems. We know the drive to sleep is a homeostatic process, but this is deeply tied into our hormones.
It manages the entire endocrine system, which is what controls hormone secretion. Sleep doesn't just happen alongside hormone changes, it actively modifies the timing and the amount of hormones that are released.
Can you give us a really concrete example of a hormone release that relies fundamentally on sleep?
Well, the two best examples relate to growth and development. First, growth hormone. Its release is tied to repair processes, muscle building, and it's secreted significantly, predominantly, during deep slow-wave sleep.
So if you cut that deep sleep, you're diminishing that necessary repair signal.
You are. And second, consider the release of luteinizing hormone, which is involved in maturational and reproductive processes.
Right.
The release of luteinizing hormone during sleep is actually thought to be the hormonal event that triggers the start of puberty.
That's powerful proof. So sleep is literally driving fundamental developmental milestones, not just happening at the same time.
Exactly. And this regulation extends to our defenses, to our immune functioning.
The hypothesis here is elegantly simple, isn't it?
It is. The idea is that sleep allows the body to strategically conserve energy and other resources, which the immune system, the body's defense system against infection, can then mobilize more effectively to fight off whatever's attacking you.
So the exhaustion we feel when we're sick isn't just a side effect, it's the body actively driving us to sleep to conserve resources for that immune response.
That's the interpretation. And supporting this, we see that molecules called cytokines, which are crucial for regulating immune function, are also powerful sleep inducers.
So when you're sick and forced to sleep, you're basically consolidating your resources for the fight.
You are.
The failure of this systemic regulation also has some really severe metabolic risks. This is another area we have to detail for the exam.
The evidence here is just stark. Chronic inadequate sleep severely disrupts your metabolic processes. Short sleep duration is strongly associated with an increased risk for obesity.
And blood samples from sleep-deprived individuals show metabolic changes that look similar to those in obese individuals.
Strikingly similar.
What's the most significant long-term disease risk that's linked directly to poor sleep duration?
That would be type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
A broad analysis found this powerful U-shaped curve in the data. People who got between 7 and 8 hours of sleep had the lowest risk.
That's sweet spot.
Right. But those who slept significantly less or significantly more then that 7 to 8 hours had a markedly higher risk.
Which shows that sleep is essential for glucose and insulin regulation, a total failure of metabolic homeostasis.
It is.
This brings us to the ultimate proof of indispensability for idea 2. You might be listening and asking, why can't I just power through? Why can't I adapt to 6 hours of sleep if I just do it long enough?
And this is a critical point that has to be in your essay. The body does not appear to be able to adapt to chronically inadequate sleep. It just doesn't.
So even modest daily reductions, losing just 1 hour a night, add up.
They accumulate into what we call a sleep debt. And that debt can't be erased in one weekend. Your performance, your thinking, your mood, they're all profoundly affected, even if you claim you feel fine.
That's called subjective underestimation of impairment.
It is.
Now, a lot of people rely heavily on stimulants, especially caffeine, to fight that feeling of fatigue. Does that actually substitute for the restorative functions you've just outlined?
Absolutely not. And this is such a common misunderstanding. Caffeine can counteract the feeling of fatigue because it blocks adenosine receptors.
And adenosine is the molecule that builds up and signals fatigue, driving that homeostatic sleep pressure.
Right. So caffeine blocks the signal telling your brain that the pressure is too high. But it cannot perform the metabolic clearance from idea 1 or the systemic restoration of idea 2 that actual sleep provides.
So caffeine doesn't clean the house, it just temporarily turns off the smoke detector. The mess is still building up and the systems are still degrading.
Precisely. It masks the impairment without reversing the deficit.
That distinction is vital for the exam. Let's create the second exam paragraph summarizing this mechanism.
Okay, the essential content here is this. Sleep is fundamental for systemic regulation and functional optimization, maintaining crucial homeostasis across the body and mind.
Start with cognition. This includes memory consolidation, where deep sleep phases organize learning and strengthen critical neural patterns.
Right, improving waking cognition and attention. Furthermore, sleep is essential for the endocrine system, regulating hormones like growth hormone for repair and supporting effective immune functioning.
Then you prove its necessity.
The necessity is proven by the accumulation of a non-compensable sleep debt. The body cannot biologically adapt to chronic inadequate sleep.
And this deficiency leads to severe long-term risks.
Yes, metabolic dysregulation, including an increased risk of type 2 diabetes, highlighting that no substitute, like caffeine, can replace the core restorative functions of actual sleep.
Okay, that covers the 2 pillars, so now we need to bring them together.
Now we come to the synthesis. Because if we connect idea 1, metabolic clearance, and idea 2, systemic regulation, we see they're deeply intertwined. They don't just run in parallel. They create a self-reinforcing loop.
So how does the quality of systemic regulation idea 2 directly impact the cleanliness of the house from idea 1?
Well, the glymphatic system, our cleaning mechanism, relies critically on the proper functioning of the systemic regulation system, specifically the deep sleep architecture.
Right.
Remember, the active pumping of the CSF needed to flush out those neurotoxins requires the presence of deep, low-frequency electrical activity, that NREM slow-wave activity, SWA.
So SWA is the engine that drives the cleaning process.
It's the dedicated engine. So this means that if you suffer from poor systemic regulation, say fragmented sleep, or sleep where you never reach that restorative depth, you can't physically run the deep cleaning.
And that's the vicious cycle narrative, which is crucial for an advanced essay answer.
It is. The decline in sleep quality, the diminished SVOA from a failure of idea 2, directly leads to impaired waste clearance, a failure of idea 1.
This failure causes toxins like amyloid beta to accumulate faster.
And what does that accumulation do? Well, it may, in turn, further disrupt the structure and quality of your sleep, perpetuating the whole neurodegenerative cycle.
They reinforce each other in a catastrophic feedback loop.
Exactly.
That connection really elevates the necessity argument. Now, let's solidify the essay by detailing the documented consequences of disrupting this system, starting with the immediate, acute effects.
The acute effects of short-term sleep loss are pervasive and immediate. You get drowsiness, irritability, reduced alertness, poor motor skills, but the emotional impact is often far more dramatic.
Tell us about the "who touched my coffee cup" phenomenon.
Sleep loss significantly heightens emotional sensitivity. It compromises your emotional regulation. The coffee cup phenomenon describes having an extreme negative emotional outburst to a mild stressor that you would normally just brush off.
Your resources for coping are just exhausted.
They're exhausted. And we see this in studies where participants were restricted to only 4.5 hours of sleep a night. They reported being significantly more stressed, sad, angry, and mentally exhausted.
And when this disruption becomes chronic, when that sleep debt builds up week after week, the consequences shift from mood issues to long-term systemic failure.
The cardiovascular system is a major victim. Chronic inadequate sleep is linked to severe conditions like high blood pressure or hypertension, stroke, and irregular heartbeat.
And why does that happen?
Well, think about it. Sleep is supposed to be when your cardiovascular system rests and recalibrates. Your blood pressure naturally dips during sleep. If your sleep is too short or fragmented, that necessary dip doesn't happen or it's reduced.
Which places chronic stress on the entire vascular system.
It does. It's a physiological amplifier of risk. The research clearly shows it directly increases blood pressure levels in people who already have hypertension.
And the mental health consequences are equally profound, connecting right back to that failure of systemic regulation.
They are. Chronic sleep problems are strongly linked to the onset or the worsening of mood disorders like major depression and anxiety.
It's tied to that compromised ability to regulate emotions.
Exactly. And in the most extreme, though thankfully rare, cases, severe, sustained sleep deprivation has been linked to psychosis, paranoia, and hallucinations. The mind just breaks down.
Finally, we have to mention the collective impact of sleep debt, where an individual's failure cascades into a public tragedy.
This is a powerful closing point for an essay. The accumulated sleep debt impairs motor and cognitive functions to a dangerous degree. The risk moves beyond just the individual.
The sources cite things like the Exxon Valdez oil spill.
Yes, and thousands of drowsy driving crashes every single year. When sleep is compromised on a mass scale, it becomes a systemic risk to public safety.
Okay, so what does this all mean? We've proven the necessity of sleep through two powerful, non-compensable biological mechanisms. We need a conclusion that brings the entire argument home for the examiner.
We have to firmly establish that sleep is not discretionary. It is a biological necessity, central to the maintenance of the human organism.
Let's nail that closing argument.
In conclusion, the fundamental necessity of sleep is irrefutably grounded in two distinct yet synergistic biological functions.
First, the active, non-compensable process of lymphatic clearance of neurotoxins.
And second, the essential maintenance of systemic homeostasis necessary for endocrine, metabolic, and cognitive regulation.
So any attempt to reduce sleep compromises both.
It compromises the brain's unique ability to keep its house clean, as we see with the link between poor slow-wave activity and future amyloid beta accumulation. And it degrades the body's capacity to maintain optimal function, leading directly to chronic physical risks.
Including cardiovascular and metabolic disease.
Yes.
And what's the final big-picture takeaway sentence for maximum rhetorical impact?
Sleep is the non-negotiable, elegant design solution for sustaining the intense activity and long-term integrity of the complex human brain.
Perfect. Now let's switch gears completely and give you some concrete, actionable support to make sure you walk into that exam feeling totally prepared. This is your exam prep toolbox.
The first step in any good essay is a solid two-sentence thesis you can write down immediately. This sets the structure for your entire response.
Okay, here it is. 1. Memorizable thesis template. 2 sentences. Sentence 1 is a definition and thesis.
Sleep is a biological imperative, not a lifestyle choice, proven by its non-optional role in ensuring survival and healthy motor and cognitive function.
And sentence 2 lays out the 2 pillars.
This fundamental role rests upon 2 indispensable biological pillars: the active nocturnal clearance of metabolic waste and the regulated daytime optimization of systemic and cognitive homeostasis.
Okay, next you need a skeletal outline you can jot down in the margin in under a minute. This locks in your structure.
This ensures you hit all the major mechanistic points.
So 2, short outline. First, define sleep-active, dynamic, and its necessity survival, homeostatic pressure.
Then idea 1, metabolic clearance, the lymphatic system. Note the problem: amyloid beta buildup, no lymphatics.
Then the mechanism. Sleep leads to cell shrinkage, which leads to a CSF flush.
And the evidence: Winter-Walker SWA and efficiency forecasting that accumulation.
Then idea 2, systemic regulation, homeostasis.
Note the mechanisms: cognitive with memory consolidation and systemic with endocrine, immune, and metabolic functions.
And its indispensability. Sleep debt, no adaptation, and caffeine is not a substitute.
And finally, your synthesis and conclusion: the vicious cycle where SWA loss leads to clearance failure.
Great. Structure is key, but avoiding common pitfalls is just as important. When students tackle this question, where do they often lose critical points?
There are a few common mistakes.
Okay. 3. Common mistakes to avoid. The first one is failing to define sleep early and accurately.
You must define it as an active, dynamic behavioral state. Do not treat it as passive.
Second mistake, listing consequences without explaining the underlying mechanism.
Right. Don't just say sleep loss causes irritability. You have to explain how the failure of systemic regulation leads to that heightened emotional sensitivity.
And the third mistake,
Adding too many non-mechanistic ideas. Focus your effort on the two main pillars, clearance and homeostasis.
finally, make sure you know exactly which sources support which argument. This shows you've synthesized the research.
It's very effective.
4. Evidence map for the essay. For idea 1, clearance.
That's strongly supported by Jeff Elis' work on the glymphatic system and the crucial data from Weiner and colleagues linking SWA and sleep efficiency to amyloid beta accumulation.
And for idea 2, regulation and homeostasis.
That's broadly supported by the NIH and medical science sources, things like the science of sleep and health consequences of sleep deficiency. They cover memory consolidation, endocrine function, the immune system, and those metabolic risks like type 2 diabetes.
That is everything you need. You have the definitions, the two mechanisms, the evidence, and the template to structure a powerful essay.
Just remember that the most potent biological defense against neurological decline and systemic failure is that deep active process you experience every single night. Sleep is not downtime. It's essential maintenance.
Use this knowledge, sleep well, and ace that exam. Good luck to you.